All right, so welcome back to PowerPoint. We seem to have everything up and running now. And if you can hear me, then we are in business. So I can see by my controls here that my voice is going out and the video is going out. So hopefully everything's working okay. If you have any problems, let me know. But I think we have our computer issues resolved. So what we're gonna do is pick up where we left off with PowerPoint. So if you haven't yet, please go to the email and let's launch Microsoft Office. And then we're going to go into PowerPoint. So we're going to create a new PowerPoint presentation. You can do it either way. If you go into the PowerPoint documents, start it there with a new blank presentation, or just like we could before, you can always go up here to this plus and create a new PowerPoint presentation from here, just like Word and Excel. So once it comes up, you'll see that every time we open a new presentation, a blank one, it always starts off with this title. So it always assumes there's going to be a title. And 9 times out of 10, it's right. So in this case, it's going to be right. But first we want to save this. Oops. So I'm going to call this one PowerPoint 2 Lunch Crunch Problems. So here's our scenario. We're going to assume that we are part of a restaurant, and the restaurant is having problems because they have too many customers coming in and things are breaking down because of too many customers. So if you're a restaurant, that's a nice problem to have. It's better than the opposite. But we want to have a meeting with our staff to decide how we're going to handle this and what we're going to do about it. So we're going to create a presentation to do just that, discuss issues. So the first thing we're going to do is click here to add title, and our place is called Harriet's Place. And then what to do about our success. All right, so before we get started, last time we did the design after we did the presentation. This time, we're going to start it early. So for this presentation, I'm going to use the organic. And then you'll see the designer comes up with some more options. But I'm going to leave it just like this. Now, the reason I can select this one, this outline, is because the organic works well with short items. There's not going to be a lot of text to read. So you can also look, if you want to thumb through the different variants, there's a couple of different options. But I figure this kind of looks like a table that you might sit in a cafe. All right, so what's going to happen now is, since we selected our design at the beginning, as we add slides, they're automatically going to be formatted. So remember I said sometimes there needs to be adjustments. If you can do your design ahead of time, you don't have to do those adjustments. They'll be adjusted as you go along. So we'll see here with insert, and we're going to do a new slide, and it's going to be a title and content slide. So as you can see here, it's pre-formatted. So it's got the little border that we didn't have in our last presentation, because this design has a couple elements to do that. So that's the advantage of being able to pick it early. Sometimes though, you don't have that advantage. You just, you have to change it and make adjustments. For a lot of places though, they will have, if they've had a presentation like this before, probably want to use a similar one just to keep things in the same style. And like I think I mentioned before, there are some companies that are very strict that you have to use a certain presentation style and nothing else. So, all right, so here we go. So our first slide after the title slide is a slide in content, and it's a question: how did this happen? So we're going to have to answer that question down below. So a couple things happen. And this does happen to restaurants once in a while. Our location makes us an ideal venue for both students and hospital staff. Okay, so there's a big lunch crunch going on with everybody coming over at the same time. The next reason is, well, actually, watch this. So I didn't capitalize the word our. If I hit the space bar, the autocorrect works the same way as it did in Microsoft Word. So you'll see it did a capital O for me. But I think I mentioned before, it makes you a lazy typist because then you assume the computer's going to do it. But it did. So our organic and vegetarian specialties have become popular fast food alternatives. Now this one wraps around to a second line, but you'll see, just like we had with Microsoft Word and our bullets, it does the indent for us. So that's good. That way it keeps it together, and then there'll be a gap between this bulleted number and the next one down below. So the third reason is our reputation for good, expensive meals, no, inexpensive meals, should be a comma there, has spread throughout town. Okay, now I want to change this list here from a bulleted list to a numbered list. So I have the tools at the top here. I'm going to go to my bulleted list, and I'm going to select to the right the numbers. And I'm going to use the numbers with parentheses. Oops, I forgot to select all three lines. Do that again. There we go. So 1, 2, 3. So again, as you're doing this presentation, having them numbered makes it easy to call out one or two things. So somebody might say, well, what about number 2? Maybe we should expand our vegetarian specialties or something. They could talk about the number of the line item rather than just say the second item. So as I mentioned before, it's just that easy to switch over, just like Microsoft Word. And all the skills we learn in Microsoft Word translate pretty well to PowerPoint. All right, so we're going to have another slide. And this one is going to be a similar slide. So I'm just going to click New Slide. And because the last slide was a title and content, when I just clicked New Slide, I got a new one. Or I could have used this drop-down list and selected title and content. And then it would pop up. Either way. All right, slide number 3. Our available options. What can we do about this terrible problem? So one is we could increase space in the dining area by building out into the patio area. The next option would be hire additional staff for lunch service. So that might help. Third option, market and improve carryout options. For customers. Okay. So we need another new slide. I'm just going to click on new slide. Now, another option is if you know ahead of time that you are going to use a couple of these slides, you can do them all at once, or you can click on them and I'm going to Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and it duplicates it. Very often, let me go back. I'll just take, went too far. I'll take a slide I've already got, even though it has data in it, and I'll just copy and paste, just because it's so much faster. And then as I type, I'll just wipe out the data. So that's another way to do things quickly. So this slide is going to be today's situation. So Harriet's Place is currently experiencing a lunch crunch. Customers are waiting too long for tables. The wait staff is overburdened. The kitchen staff is overwhelmed. All right. So this is the basics of our presentation to get started. So let's take a look at it, run the show. So I'm going to go to slideshow from the beginning. Okay, I already see one thing I want to do. I want to add a question mark to our success. So how did this happen? Available options. Today's situation. Good. All right. So as I look at it, I think I mentioned I need a question mark after our success. So I go to slide 1, click on the subtitle, put a question mark at the end, done. I also don't think this goes in the right order. So I'm going to click on view here. And I'm going to use a slide sorter view. I think we were here before. So this just shows me all the slides and their layout. And they go from left to right. And you can see they're numbered too, so that always helps. So as I look, I think really, today's situation should probably come first. So I want to grab slide 4, and drag it between slide 1 and 2. Everything scoots over. When I release it, 4 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 4. Okay, so there we go. All right. So this is another way to reorder your slides and to just kind of see your presentation in a different light. It's really helpful if you have a large number of slides, because the normal view doesn't always show all that. You can see like 3 or 4 at a time. Speaking of normal view, let's go back to that over here. Okay. So under today's situation, which is now slide 2, I've got a bulleted list, but I want to change my bullets. So I'm going to go back to my home ribbon, select my bulleted list here. And this time I'm going to leave it a bulleted list, but I want to put diamonds next to it. There we go. Now, as I look here, there is something I want to emphasize. And it's basically our wait staff is overburdened. So I'm going to highlight by clicking the highlighter and turning it yellow. So that way, when I run the presentation, this one will show up as yellow. Okay, the next thing I need to do is when we go to available options, so this is just a short list of options. What we're going to do is we want to make each of these bullets its own slide. So what that's going to do is in effect make this available options like its own section that you're going to read through quickly and then go through each option one at a time. So how to do that? Oh, it's easy. New slide. I'm going to go back to available options. I'm going to copy my title. Okay. I'm going to paste it here. And then where it says click to add text, I want to make this a numbered list. And this time I want to use the number with a period after it. So I've got 3 of these slides. I'm going to make copies now. So I'm going to copy slide 5, paste, paste. So I've got the formatting and the available options already set. Let's go to the content here. I'm going to select the first sentence. Go to slide 5. That's increase space in the dining area. And again, I want to make that. I'm going to turn off the bullets. Okay, let's go do the next one. Back to slide 4. Our additional staff. Now that's going to be slide 6. So I'm going to click in the subtitle. And again, I want to remove the bulleted list. And let's go back to slide 4. I'm going to grab the market and improve carryout options. And make that the subtitle or the content for slide 7. So let's take a look at how this is going to work. So I'm going to run my show from the beginning. So I'm going to grab everybody at the meeting and say, all right, everybody, here's our problem. What do we do about our success? So you can explain each of these issues and you'll see the situation. The wait staff is overburdened, especially these days, you know, what they call it, the great resignation. You never know, everyone might just quit on you if they make it too hard. And besides, unhappy staff make for unhappy customers. Okay, so then we go into, here's the background. Here's what happened to us. We are the victims of our own success. And here are the options. We could increase space, we could hire additional staff, or we can market and improve carryout options. Let's take a look at those. First one, available options. And then you talk about increasing staff. So what are the costs and everything like that? When you're done with that one, you move on to the next one. We could hire additional staff. Well, again, that's going to make more costs and where are they all going to sit? Things like that. And then the final one, I click again, market and improve carryout options for customers. Okay, So now, just a couple of things. When I run the show, watch it again, but watch the borders and then watch the text. And I'll show you what I mean as I go along here. Okay, the first slide is obviously title slide. So it has a much different look and layout than all the other slides. You can see that by when I click. See how the white space grew? But now as I click through these other slides, you'll notice the white space doesn't grow. It stays the same, it's static. Then as I go into my available options, now something else is not going to change. This area up here is going to stay the same as I click through the next slides. What's underneath it's going to change, but not this. So you'll see that looks static. So technically, the computer is refreshing the phrase available options and the underline. What's happening is it's doing it so fast, and because it's in the exact same position, we don't really see it. That's something you need to keep in mind as you're working with PowerPoint. See how that worked? Down here, the mark and improve and carry out option, that did change, and that becomes clearly obvious. It's the only thing that changed, or it looks like it changed. So one of the things to keep in mind is PowerPoint, in many ways, is like the flip books we made when we were kids. I don't know if you remember doing that, where you draw like a little stick figure on one page, and then the next page has a stick figure moving a leg, and the next one moves an arm, or something like that. And then you flip it all together and it looks like animation. Well, that's essentially what you're getting with PowerPoint. It's flipping through these different slides one at a time. And we can control the rate by right now using the mouse click. Okay. So as you're working with slides, one of the things you can do is change how they move from one slide to the next. That's called transitions. And you'll see we have a whole ribbon up here with a menu of many different options for transitions. So I'm going to change my ribbon to the wide ribbon so we can see more. And here's the way this is going to work. As I look here in this pick list, I have a number of options from which I can choose. So you'll see they're grouped together, like this one says subtle, exciting, and then there's another one, dynamic content. So you kind of have to use your judgment on these, but there are lots that you can select. What you can do is you can tell it how it's going to move from one slide to the next. So we're going to use fade to start. Okay. Then, now when I run the slide, first I'm going to click here, apply to all. And what that's going to do, it's going to make all my slides have the same transition, which is fade now. Okay, they're done. How do I know they're done? If I look on the left-hand side of the slide, I now have this little bar and a star. And that's telling you there is a transition set. If there were no transition, I turned it off and click apply to all. See, it's gone. But I go back to fade, apply to all. Now it's on. So what does that do? Well, let's take a look. Let's run our slideshow from the beginning. Did you see how the screen was black and then it faded to this slide? If you didn't watch again, it's going to do it again, except instead of from black, it's from one slide to the next. So when I click, now as it transitions, it's a slow fade. Because the background is exactly the same on all but the first slide, it doesn't look like it's changing much. But you can see the text is. I'm going to go back to my transitions. Let's say I didn't care for that transition, so I want to use a more dynamic one. How about wipe? So I'm going to click on wipe, and then I want to apply to all. So here's what happens. You notice how it has apply to all? That means they're all going to have the same transition. And if I click on slide 2, you'll see wipe is still selected up here. So what you might do is each slide can have its own separate transition. And you certainly can. The problem with some of these transitions is they get a little distracting. But let's try wipe. So we're going to go to slideshow from the beginning and see how it wiped across the screen. I click again. It does a wipe across the screen. So that's the difference. I'm going to go back to my transitions again. Now I've got it set to wipe. You'll see here there's also control for the duration. So I can make it wipe faster or slower. So you really don't want to go too slow, but I'm going to slow it down to 5, just so we can really see it. I'm going to run the slideshow again, see if you can see the difference. Our title slide. See the slow wipe across? And then the rest, because I didn't click apply to all, they're still at the 1. I'm going to escape out of this. I go back to slide 1, go back to the transitions, and I tell it apply to all. Now when I run the show, they're all going to have the slow transition. Click again, see the slow transition. If I were doing this for real, I would never do a transition this slow. It would drive me crazy. And these days too, with everybody's short attention spans, it's a little bit too long. But there could be a specific circumstance where you want to move from one slide to the other very slowly. Like even from here, from our available options, now you might want it to go slowly, so that you can see, we're going to talk about the first one first. So there are reasons to do that. However, I'm going to escape out of it. And you can always cancel any slideshow that's running by hitting the escape key on the keyboard. And that way you don't have to go through it all. I'm going to go back to slide 1 and transitions. And I'm going to change that from 5 back down. I'll make a compromise. I'll do 2.5. Another thing you'll see is when you select a transition, some of them will have an option. So right now, it's from the right, okay? I could have it do it from, say, the opposite, from the top left down. Okay, so now I said it's top left, apply to all, and you'll notice my duration went back to 1. Every time you change it, the duration defaults back to 1. You have to modify it if you wanted to. So what did I say, 2.5? And apply to all. So now watch as I run it from the beginning. As each slide comes in, it actually wipes from the opposite direction, and then there we go. So it's a different kind of wipe. Instead of from side to side, you get that. So if you're ever curious, you can go through all these and check them out. It's the same thing, but it's variations on the theme. So like in this case, it would do it from the bottom. Let's take a look at some more interesting transitions. So you notice our first category is subtle. So those are transitions that people will see but not really notice. Sometimes you want to make them look a little bit more interesting. So the next category batch we have is exciting. I don't know if they're exciting, but they're a lot more interesting. So I'm going to select curtains. I want curtains to apply to all. And I'm going to slideshow from the beginning. Ta-da! So it looks like it's drawing curtains back on a stage or a movie theater. I click again. So now we're getting close to people, instead of your audience watching what you're saying, they're watching the curtains like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. How do you do that in PowerPoint? That's pretty cool. So that can be a little distracting. I'm going to cancel that. So that's the difference. You'll see there's plenty that you can select from. And it's basically, whatever your desire is. You don't have to have every slide the same. You can make them so that most slides are the same, but one is different. Like maybe at the end, say you want to do, let's actually do that. So I'm going to change my slide. So from slide 1, I'm going to use uncover. Okay. So it's 0.75 seconds. It's going to do it. I'm going to change it from the left. I'm going to apply to all. Okay, now I'm going to go to the bottom. And I want to add a new slide. So I'm going to go to Insert, Home. You can, well, let's do it from Insert. You can do it from Insert too. There's Insert New Slide. We've just been doing it from Home. Title and Content. And now, call this one Discussion. And we're going to ask the people in attendance, what are your thoughts? And I'm going to use italics, so it's Control-I, or in Home, you can click the italics button. Let's spell the word your correctly. So you'll see these a lot. This is at the end. The final slide is going to be just general discussion. So you open it up to the crowd and everybody can give their 2 cents. Sometimes you have to do that, especially if you don't have a very chatty group. Some groups are so chatty, they'll talk the whole way through. Other ones, you actually have to ask them. Okay, so in this case, you'll notice this one already has a transition set. This inherited the same transition as our title slide. Why? Because we told, when we set the title slide, apply to all. And all means all, even slides yet made. So as it creates a new slide, it carries over that transition. We're going to change that for this slide. So I'm going to click on Discussion. I'm on slide 8, Transition. And this time I'm going to use Airplane. It's going to fly to the right. I'm going to change it to the left. And the duration, I am going to make a little bit longer. I'll make this 2.5. Okay. Now, on the indicators, it looks like everything's all the same. The only way to tell which transition the slide has is by clicking on the slide itself. So I'm on slide 8, and you'll see Airplane is grayed out. If I click on slide 5, now I see wipe. Or pardon me, not wipe, but uncover. So that's the way you can tell what the current transition is. So I'm going to go to slideshow. Let's take a look at this and see how it looks with our last slide with the paper airplane. So we got that one, that one, that one, that one. Available options, second option, third option. See how it threw it away as a paper airplane? And now we go discussion. What are your thoughts? So each, like I said, each slide can have its own transition, or they can all be one transition, and then at the final one, you kind of do something like that, because that just says, all right, we're done with our presentation. Now let's talk about it. So it's a visual cue that the presentation is formally over. Now we're just going to open up to discussion. And then I click on again, and it ends. So I'm going to go back to my transition for discussion. And you'll see the transition is always what does the slide move into. So in that one, because it's the very end, I'm going to make this a little bit longer, 3.5 seconds. When I looked at my options under airplane, you'll see I only have 2. If you remember from wipe, it had more. Depending on the transition, it can have a lot of different options, or it can have a few options, or some will have no options. Let's see if I can remember one that has no options. Usually, I think like glitter. Nope. Oh, I was wrong. Glitter has a lot of options. So anyway, there are a couple in there that you might run into that have no options. So if that's the case, you just got to use what you have. Now, here's the difference again between the Office 365 version of PowerPoint and the desktop. The 365 doesn't have as many transitions here, and it doesn't have as many options. The PowerPoint on the desktop has a lot more, which, frankly, it can, it's not always a good thing to have too many things to look at, because what'll happen is you say, oh, well, I like what I have, but, what could this one be? Here's another thing. It's fun to have, but a little dangerous, and that is random. If you choose random, let's say I selected random and apply to all, every time you watch the presentation, the transitions will be different, because what it does, it randomly selects one and uses that as its transition. So as the presenter, you'd never know what's coming next. So that might be a little distracting, and it could choose between exciting and the dynamic content and subtle. And there's just no rhyme or reason to it. So some people think, oh, I can't decide, I'll just do random. Well, the problem with random is, like I said, it can be a bit much. And again, you don't want people thinking about the presentation. You want them thinking about the content of the presentation. So usually, just pick a subtle one and stick with it. Again, from my experience, I've never had a presentation where anybody said, I don't think I would have remembered anything except for those transitions. They really helped. It's kind of one of those things that you have to have a transition. The computer can do some pretty cool transitions, but they just add a little bit. You don't want them to add a whole lot, because then the whole presentation comes about the technical side of PowerPoint. So any questions on those? There are also a couple transitions where you cannot change the timing. So the timing is set on a couple of them. So I'm going to go through, and just as an example, I'm going to change each of my slide transitions to be a different one. And I'm going to select the ones that are most, I don't want to say obnoxious, but certainly the ones that become most noticeable. And yeah. So yeah, okay. So each one has its own slide transition, and here's a chance to see how it would look. Now, on the other hand, if you're trying to show off in front of the boss, maybe it's worth seeing it. Okay, so here we go. Here's Harriet's place. What to do about our success? Okay, so that one flipped over. That one, it looked like it was water ripples. That one looked like it fell over. This one flipped over in squares. They call it checkerboard. This one looks like the wind blew it away. That's supposed to be glitter. There's our paper airplane. See, this airplane was a lot slower this time. And we're open to discussion. So you see the difference? So again, it really depends on what effects you want. Like I said, if you're trying to show off in front of your coworkers and the boss, sure, make all the fun transitions. Let them eat cake. Don't tell them how you did it. On the other hand, if it's kind of a formal presentation and you're really having them focus on the content, then sometimes the transitions can be a bit of a distraction. So I'm going to go back to my transitions. Now, even though I've selected a different transition for each slide, if I go back here, this time I'll use push. I'll make the duration just a little bit longer, 1.5 seconds, and then apply to all. What's going to do, it's going to wipe out my other transitions. I don't know if you can see it on my screen. They flip for just a second all the way down. And I can verify by clicking on slide 2, and it says push here. Same with slide 3, 4, 5. Okay, all the way down. I'll run it real quick just to verify. And you'll see they're all set to push. So they're pushed up like they're on a big roll. And then even my last one with the paper airplane is now push. Done. So here's a technique to keep in mind. If you want to have, let's say you had 30 slides here, and you want all of them to be the same except for 2 or 3, what I would suggest is get all your slides done the best that you can, then go to those transitions, and if you're doing like we're doing, let's try a different one. We'll do uncover. It's like turning a page. And then apply to all. So get this one down. So that's most of your slides. And then like we did before, you go to the slide that you want to be different. And this time, instead of paper airplane, I'll go to origami. I'm going to slow this one down too, but do not apply to all. And then again, I'll switch it to the left. So what that did, as I click on these slides at the top, you can see that it's uncover, uncover, uncover until I get to the bottom. Number 8. Whoops, I messed up. I messed up. I moved my available options down to the bottom, and I didn't mean to do that. So it's okay, I can use my slide sorter and move it back up. So as I was sliding or scrolling down, I accidentally clicked on slide 6, dropped it at the bottom, and I didn't want it. So I'll put it back on top of discussion. There we go. And discussion has origami. So real quick, run it through from the beginning. So the idea is do the most of them, the majority of them, as applied to all, and then go in and individually change the ones you don't want to apply to all. That was origami. So that way it's much easier. Because like I said, if you had 30 of these and say 7 or 8 of them had unique transitions, then you accidentally applied to all or on purpose applied to all, you have to go back and do the 7 or 8 over again. Okay. Any questions on the transitions? So you'll notice that when we started, we didn't use transitions. You don't have to. It just flips from one slide to the next. Transitions, though, can make things more interesting and a little more fun. Plus, you can use, like I said, you can have them, certain slides have emphasis by giving them a different transition. So with that, it is 6:56. It's break time. We'll come back at 7:06, and then we're going to do some graphics and animation. Okay, we are back from break. So as I mentioned, we kind of have a little animation between slides. Well, we can do animation within slides themselves. So we're going to start by going to our title. And what I want to do is I want to put a picture of a restaurant for Harriet's Place. Now, if I really had a restaurant, I just go out on my phone and take a picture and we can insert that. Since we don't have that, we'll just go to the internet. So I'm going to use the insert ribbon that we've done before and picture, just like we've done before. If I had the picture of the phone on my phone, I could put it on this computer and use this device, or I could send it to my OneDrive. But in this case, I'm going to use Bing Pictures. And I'm just going to type in the word restaurant. So you'll see, it's basically a whole option here, different fancy restaurants, fast food restaurants, outdoor restaurants. If I wanted to limit it, I could say something like cafe restaurant, which is more like what Harriet sounds like. So how about, let's say something like this, looks like a little diner. And I'm going to insert that graphic. Now, as I mentioned before, you do have the copyrights that come along with it. But for our purposes, we can use these for educational purposes. I'm going to grab it and shrink it down into the lower right-hand corner. Okay. The designer likes to pop up a lot. I'm going to keep closing it because I'm going to do this all manually. But you can do that. You can use the designer and it will allow you to skip a lot of this, but it basically does it for you, except for selecting the graphics. All right, so I don't want it overlapping success. So if I use the circles with the double arrows, I can shrink it down so it's not on there. And then I try to keep it within the border of our little graphic here. See how we have this little interior border? And then when I click on it, of course, I get this picture tool ribbon. And as we saw before, you do have all these styles to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and pick the metal oval. So you're kind of looking in through a round window or something like that. That would be the idea. Okay. So let's go to slide 2. Let's find a graphic for this one. And this is going to be today's situation. So we have a lunch crunch, right? So I'm going to click on this slide, go back to Insert, Pictures, this device, pardon me, Bing Pictures. And I'm going to say Mad Chef, because I said our kitchen staff is overwhelmed. Oh, there's Ramsay. Okay, these don't look too mad. Here's an option though, well, there's one that's pretty mad, that you run into is just like before, it's a mix of things. So this case, I wanted something a little lighthearted. So I don't want to see photographs, I want to say clip art. So let's say here, I'm kind of a crazy chef here. I'm going to click on the copyright notice, click on one of the circles and delete it. And I'm going to move my Mad Chef here next to the kitchen staff is overwhelmed. All right. So if I wanted to, I could do a graphic for every one of these bulleted items. The problem is it'd be a little much. And again, a little goes a long way. So you could certainly do it. And we've done it sometimes kind of for effect, because you can also animate the graphics or the text as it comes in. So it just kind of depends on what your goal is. All right, so I've got him at the bottom, just right there. Let's go to how did this happen? I'm going to go back up under my insert ribbon, pictures, Bing Pictures. And this time, instead of putting in a noun, I'm going to put in an adjective, popular, and see what pops up. So you don't have to just search by nouns. I'm going to try to find one here that has, I think this will do it, most popular. And I'll place this at the bottom. Now notice, as I enlarge it here, see how my graphic, the red and the lines, will overlap the text if I make it too big. So you can do overlapping. Remember, these are going to come over in sequence. So I'm going to give it a slight turn, and then I'm going to overlap throughout town, just by a little bit. And you'll see why when we run it. All right, so we got the first three done. Let's take a look at how that's going to affect our show. We're going to slideshow from the beginning. So you see the graphic comes in with my title slide. The chef comes in with all of the bulleted items. And then I do have my most popular overlapping. Then we go on to our slides that don't have anything yet. I'm going to escape out of it. So if you do nothing, these graphics will just come in along with the slide as if they're all part of the one thing. But as with our slides, we can also animate these graphics. So you'll see here we have animations. I'm going to click on animations. If I'm not clicked on anything that can be animated, you'll see it's all grayed out down below. So you'll see right now I haven't selected anything. But the minute I select my picture, it now shows an active tool here. So just like with transitions, these pictures have animations too. So once again, you've got a couple other pretty just standard, nothing too fancy. And then you've got emphasis, which is fancy. And then you've got exit. So what the first two groups will do is basically introduce the picture. The other one will get rid of it. So we'll see that in just a second here. So for our picture here, I want to do a fade. You'll notice when I add an animation to it, I get a little number next to it. That tells me that'll be the first animated thing on the slide, right? No big deal, because there's only one animated thing on my slide. But let's take a look at how that's going to work. So I do it from the beginning. As I run it, there's my slide, but no picture. So it's going to wait for my mouse click. Now the mouse click, instead of moving it to the next slide, does the first animation. And there it is. When I click again, now we go to the next slide. I'm going to escape out of that to cancel it. So you can have more than one thing animated. We're going to do that as we get a little bit more advanced. But let's go to slide 2 and let's animate our chef. So I'm going to go back to animations. So in this case, I want the chef to grow and turn. So I click on grow and turn. I get my little 1, and now it's set to grow and turn. So let's take a quick look at what he's going to do. And again, on the desktop version, you get many more animations as options. So there's Harriet's Place, there's our little restaurant. You notice the chef's not over yet. And so what I can do is I can say, let's talk about Harriet's Place. It's currently experiencing a lunch crunch. Our customers are waiting too long for tables. Our wait staff is overburdened. And let me tell you, the kitchen staff is overwhelmed. I just clicked, and there comes the crazy chef. So you don't have to click at any particular time except when you're ready. So I clicked it, and there's my overwhelmed kitchen staff. See how that worked? And then it came in as a rotate. It rotated from small to large. Here's where that's going to become really important. Remember, I intentionally overlapped my most popular over some of my text. That's okay, because I'm going to go to the animation. And I'm going to have this one fly in. You'll see I do have effect options on this effect for this item. So here's my drop list. Right now it's coming from the bottom. Well, it's already at the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to change it to move in from the top left. All right. So let's take a quick review of our slideshow, see how it's going. So here comes my title slide. I click, there's our restaurant. Click again, next slide. I go through my list. There's my overwhelmed kitchen staff. Click again. So now I can go through these items, 1, 2, 3, and I can say our reputation spread throughout town. Click, and see how it zoomed in over here. And now it's okay to be overlapping throughout town a bit. Why? I already read it. We already talked about it a little bit. And now when it pops over, it's not like people are missing things or have to try to figure out what the words are. So you can do overlapping, and overlapping can be pretty powerful visually. So just keep that in mind, that it doesn't look, when I look at my slide, at this point, it doesn't look so good. Like, why would you do that? You can't even read the word town. Well, it's going to come in later, because when I click on it and go to animations, I can see there's an animation attached to it. So that means the animation will come after we read it. So that works. Let's go to slide 4. So for our available options, let's go to Insert, Pictures. And this time I want to go to Stock Images. Here's the difference. Stock images are ones Bing or Microsoft has already picked out. You can search them. As I mentioned before, these are more likely to be safe as far as any copyright issues. So I'm going to put in question mark. See here, I got a bunch of question marks. So I'm going to insert this one. These are a bunch of sticky notes with question marks all over. I'm going to drag this one down. And as I drag, you'll see I get guidelines that tell me how close I am to the center and when everything's lined up. So the center of the slide. I'm going to click on my picture options. So while we're here, if you want to change the size, you can manually change it by grabbing the circles and dragging in and out towards the center or away. The other thing you can do is you can specify up here in the upper right-hand corner how big it is. So let's say I want to make it 3 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Okay, it did it. So you can also specify by the numbers if you were trying to get it just a certain way. If you're printing on special paper, again, that might be a reason you want to specify the width and the height. In the desktop version, you'll see there is a little checkbox here, right around here somewhere. It says lock aspect ratio. And what it means is you can see, my picture here is clearly wider than it is tall. So right now it's a 3:2 ratio. If you lock that in place, when you change one number, the other number will automatically update to keep that ratio the same. It'll always be 3:2, no matter how big I make it. So we don't have that here. That's useful sometimes, but most things, most are just done freehand. So this is telling us that we have a bunch of questions to resolve here. I'm going to go to my next slide, slide 5. And now I'm going to insert picture. I go to Bing Pictures. And I'm going to put in table. So I want to look like something similar to, say, a dining table. I have a round one here. So I'm going to insert that one. Okay, I'm going to delete this little disclaimer. Okay, I want another table. So I'm going to insert picture, Bing Pictures. This time I want a square one. Now you'll notice, I'm going to go ahead and pick this first one. It has a shadow on it. So that's kind of a different style. Now you can mix and match styles if you like, but usually you try to keep them the same. You will also see this one has a bit of shading behind it. So it's not particularly white. If I wanted one that was by itself, like this round one, it's what's called transparent, meaning if I hover it over here, like over the words patio area, I can still see the words patio area. Why? Because even though my square is overlapping the text, the white is transparent. I cannot do that with this one. See, if I try to put it over, the background blocks it out. So that's a different style. I'm going to go for a third table. And let's say I want one like my round table that has a transparent background. So I'll put in round table. And then in my filter here, this little funnel, we've used this tool before, I'm going to select transparent. So that's only going to show me tables that are transparent or have transparent backgrounds. So I'm going to click on this little one here. All right, this one's going to go on the far left. So 3 different kinds of tables. If I wanted to, I could have just selected the one and copied it, pasted it a couple times. One thing you can do, slide this one over.
That is so cool.
Is you can resize it, and I can even stretch it out, this way. It almost looks like a different table.
Yeah.
And then if you know a little bit about drawing, you can work with your perspective. So this would be a larger table sitting in front and things like that. So that's a shortcut too, is you can use the same table. I just wanted 3 just to be different and to show you the difference between transparent and non-transparent. And Now I'm ready to animate them. So here we go. I'm going to click on the round table first on the right side. I'm going to go to my animations. This one, I want to fly in, but I want it to come all the way across my slide. So I'm going to click on fly in, and you'll see my effect options, and I'm going to move it from the left. Okay, so that's the first thing that'll happen. The next thing I want to happen is my middle table. I want that one to fly in as well. So it's going to fly in from left again. So it's like my storage area is all off to the left, and somebody's sliding them in from the left. And then finally, my last table, it'll fly in from the left too. All right, so now I have 3 animations, and I can tell because as the animation ribbon is turned on, and you can see it up here, I've got numbers next to the graphics. 3, 2, 1. So that tells you the order the graphics are going to come in. So let's take a look. This time, rather than do the whole slideshow, I don't want to look at the first three slides, right? Because we already got those down. I'm just going to have it run from the current slide only. And so you'll see that here. And there's also a tool that always stays up down here to run it. So you can always check and see how it's going to work. So I click on from current slide. And here we go. So there's my available options. Increase space in the dining area by building out in the patio area. I click with my mouse, comes to number 1. Click again, number 2. Click again, number 3. Okay. So that's the order they're in, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to click on the third table, go back to animations, and let's say I want that one to come in first. What would it look like if I did it the opposite direction? So you'll see this is number 3. I'm going to click on the option to move earlier. Okay, 3 became 2. Click it again. 2 became 1. So the number down here is now 1. These other graphics change their order too. They have to. Nobody can both be 1. So as something else becomes 1, whatever was 1 became 2, and whatever was 2 became 3. So I'm going to click on my middle table. I'm going to move that one earlier too. Now it's number 2. I was going to do the same thing to my third table, but it's already done for me. Because remember, nothing can be in the same second spot. So it already adjusted it to spot number 3. So that's done. So let's take a look at this. And again, I'm just going to look at the current slide. Okay, there's my slide. It's waiting for my mouse click. 1, 2, 3. Done. I'm going to escape to cancel it. So that's how you can shuffle these around, and they can go in any order. The computer doesn't care. It's whatever you think works best. I'm going to click on 3. I'm going to actually go back to number 1 now. I liked the way it was before. So I could do undo, or I'm going to use now move later. Remember before I click on this one. So I'm going to click here on this table, and I'll say later. I want this to be the last. That's number 3. I want this one to be number 2, so I'll do move later. And number 1 is move earlier. Well, I don't have to move earlier. It's already done it for me. You'll see the number 1 doesn't have the option to move earlier. It's grayed out because you can't get any higher than number 1. First place is first place, but I can move later. The opposite's true on my last item. It's the third place. It can't go any later. Could go earlier, but it certainly can't go later. And then number 2 does have both options because it could go first or it could go last. So if you're wondering, why is that grayed out? It's grayed out because it's as far as it can go in one direction. All right, so there's our additional tables. let's go to our next available option. So hire additional staff for lunch service. I am going to go to Insert, Pictures. Let's go to Bing Images. And I'm just going to type in wait staff. So while I'm here, I'm going to pick a couple. So I've got one here and one here. I got 2 people. So you can insert more than one at a time. I'm going to click on Insert. Here they come. All right, well, okay, if those are real. This one, the first one would not be a good one because she's wearing a shirt that has somebody else's name on it. Although I guess we could be saying we're going to steal them away. So I'm going to move her to the lower left-hand corner. And actually, I changed my mind. Since he's looking to the right, I'm going to switch them around. So he's looking more towards the middle of my slide. And that gives us 2 people. So let's animate them. I'll start with the one on the right. I'll go to my animations. This time, I'm just going to have the people fade in. So I'm going to click on Fade. That's slide 1. Oh, by the way, Fade, you notice, has no effect options. So you're kind of stuck with just plain old fade. I do think in the desktop version, you can time the fade, make it slower or faster. I want the second person to fade as well. Here's the thing though. I can go back to my home ribbon. And do you remember our format paintbrush? If I've selected the first one that I've already added an animation to, I can use the format painter, click on the second graphic, and then when I go to my animations, you can have it set to fade too. So again, you'll get the numbers to tell you it's 1 and 2. In her case, if that were really a problem with the picture, there's a couple things you can do about having somebody else's logo on there. One is you can explain it. We're going to hire, what is it? I'm going to enlarge this so I can see what she had. Smokies, that's the name of it. So I could say, we're going to steal people from Smokies and hire them over here. So that would be an option. Another thing you can do is you can draw a little square, a white square over the shoulder patch. And that would do it. Or because it's a photo, it's a picture, I can click on the picture ribbon. And if you remember from Word, there are things you can do with the picture so that not all of it is showing. So you could also crop it out and basically just show down to her shoulders and do that. Okay, we're not going to be too worried about that. All right, let's go to slide 7 and we'll take a look at them all when we're done. So the good old carryout, DoorDash, Uber Eats, that kind of thing. So let's do Insert, Picture. Now, if you're really proposing Uber Eats, that might be an option. You could put in the Uber Eats logo. We're going to say takeout. And I was looking for like clip art style. So I'm going to go to my filter. Let's do clip art. It's timeout, not takeout. And I'm going to refine my search by saying takeout bag. So here's a grocery bag. I'll insert the grocery bag. And then I said we wanted to mention, we move it over here. So I want to add a couple lines here. I'm going to hit enter after customers. I'm going to hit the tab key and the space bar to move it in. And we're going to say Uber Eats. DoorDash, just to name a couple. So when you're inserting graphics for those, it's in the Bing pictures, I can do Uber Eats and actually get their logo. And I definitely don't think they'll mind because it's advertising for them. And then DoorDash. Now, if you're looking for logos, you definitely have to use the Bing pictures because the stock pictures won't have those, won't have corporate logos. I'm going to resize that and drag it over here. I'll get rid of the little disclaimer here. Okay, so time for animation. I'll start with my bag. I'm going to click on animations. This one, I'm going to use the basic zoom. I want to do the same thing for Uber Eats. And the same thing for DoorDash. All right, so you'll notice that I didn't do them left to right. I could, but I was trying to be interesting. So I'm going to use the bag first, and then Uber Eats and DoorDash. Okay. So this is going to be just like our tables. And finally, for discussions, let's do an insert, pictures, Bing pictures, and we're just going to put in thoughts. And you'll see the key is to get a good search term. And if you select it and things don't show up right, what you can do is change the filter. Like if you're looking for a photograph, you could try that and see what happens. I think those are just deep thoughts, yeah. But clip art, like in this case, I was looking for somebody thinking. So you get a lot more thinking drawings this way. So I kind of like this one with a person with lots of thought balloons. So get lots of ideas. So I'm gonna get rid of this. Now this time, I'm going to increase the size as big as I can because I don't have much else on the slide. Plus, I'm emphasizing I want your thoughts, everybody. You could have it stretch all the way, like under the what are your thoughts? But as I mentioned before, you do have aspect issues, meaning watch what happens if I stretch it out. Now it looks too stretched. It looks unnatural. You know, the human head is not that shape. So that's the problem with stretching it out too far in one direction, not the other. I could fix that by giving it more height, but now I can't read my words. So that's kind of one of those issues. The other thing I can do, though, is I can use send backwards. So you'll see up here at the top, I've got the send backwards option. And just like when we were dealing with pictures before, you have the option of layering things. So if I send it to the back, now you'll see, I can still see my words, or most of them. So the other thing to do now is fiddle with it until, let's see if I make it smaller. So I want to see the word discussion in a thought balloon, and then the what are your thoughts in a balloon, kind of like that. It's a very subtle thing, but if you look here, you can see the border of my graphic. It's a different color than the background of my slide. Well, for my purposes, that's okay. If that's really an issue, there are things you can do. In the desktop version of Microsoft PowerPoint, you can select a color, like in this case, this white color, and make it transparent. And some graphics will convert to transparent that way. So there's little things you can do. Okay, this graphic, I want to animate it. And this time, I think I'll use the blinds. Blinds looks like velour blinds. So when you're opening the blinds, you do have effect options like this to make it horizontal or vertical. I'm going to turn it to vertical. And let's run the show now with all of our animated graphics. See if it's more interesting. I'm going to run it from the beginning, and let's see what it did. So it comes up with the title slide. When I click again, here comes our issues. Then how did this happen? Oh, we're the most popular. The question marks, I didn't animate. I forgot to do that. So you'll see it just showed up with a slide. And that's okay too. You don't have to animate everything. But this one definitely does. It's got 3. Here's our staff. And you'll see they came in from right to left. And then we say we could do Uber Eats and DoorDash for carryout. And then you could talk about Uber Eats and the advantages, disadvantages of that, and DoorDash and the advantages and disadvantages of DoorDash for this restaurant. Now, everybody, what are your thoughts? And you see how it came over like it opened the blinds. And it's done. So a couple things. I didn't really like the blinds. So let's say I want to go back and change the animation. I can just by clicking on the graphic. And say I want to have it just fade in. And then I did forget my question marks here. So I'm going to change the animation on this slide. This time I'll use stretch. Oh wait, I know what I was going to do this one. I'm sorry. Stretch, we'll just kind of stretch it out, snap back. In this case, I wanted to use one we haven't used before, an exit. So the exits are in red, right? What that will do is kind of like the opposite. Instead of introducing it, it has it disappear. So I'm going to use the zoom on the question mark. There we go. Okay. I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to do a run up to this slide. So this is the other technique you can use. If you say, okay, I want to practice with this slide a little bit and see how it's going to look, but I want to see how I'm going to get into this slide. So I'm going to start a slide before. So I'll click on slide 3. When I go to my slideshow, I'm going to start from this current slide. So how did this happen? Okay, well, we are the most popular now. Now we go to the next slide. Okay, so here are available options. We have questions about what we need to do. Should we increase space? Should we hire additional staff? Should we market and improve carryout options? Now watch when I click what happens. See, the questions disappeared. When I click again, now it moves to the next slide. This is the table one, and the table is doing entrance. So you'll see that's the difference between an entrance animation and an exit animation. The exit animation occurs at the end of the slide before you're done, or before you transition to the next slide. So you, in 365, you can't have an entrance and an exit, but in PowerPoint on the desktop, you can. And then it has it come in, and then it has it leave. And you could certainly do that. You can also choose any of these exits, and they have, different emphasis, but they're essentially the same type of animation that we used before, but it's on the exit, not on the entrance. So that's the other technique you can use. All right, so looks like we're getting close here to being done. Let me just run it through one more time and see how it looks from the beginning. There's Harriet's Place, our crazy chef. We are the most popular in town. We got questions to deal with now. Let's take a look at these options. More tables, more staff, more carryout. Okay, everybody, what are your thoughts? Let's talk about this. And we have our discussion. The end. So you see how the animations work? Once again, it's one of those things that it's great, makes the slide presentation much more interesting. At the same time, too much can be too much. In other words, if you had too many graphics, it can be distracting. And then sometimes people do get carried away because they are a lot of fun to work with. But like even with Harriet's Place here, if I had 10 pictures of Harriet's Place, I don't really want to put them all in once, because then it becomes like a picture slideshow rather than a presentation. And you can do that if you really wanted to, but people get hung up on that, and they remember about how long Harriet's Place has been here, and they're not focusing on what our topics are today with the current situation. So it's always a judgment call, and if you give the presentation more than once, you'll find that as you do it, some things had bigger impacts than others. So you can adjust it. You can always change it. You can always make different versions and do different kinds of presentations. If you feel like this is really handy and you had other branches of Harriet's Place in other cities who want to watch it, you can actually turn this into a live presentation. So you'll see up here in the right-hand corner, with your 365 account, you can turn on the 365, I lost my screen here, presentation, and actually share this live with other people. It's more like a Zoom meeting like we're doing now, but they do have this, and it's available to you now, and you can always do that. The other thing you can do is record it and record your voice, which I know everybody hates, but once you have it recorded with the audio, you can save it as a movie and post it on YouTube, things like that. So if you had, let's say, 5 other Harriet's Places across the country, and corporate had you do this for them, you could set this up with a recording, all your animations, and then set it to record. It'll save. You could upload it to YouTube and give everybody the link, and they could watch it and send you feedback by email or something. So that's another option too. So any questions about our transitions and our animations? They're similar, but they have different purposes. And you'll notice there's a lot more here for transitions than we have in animations in 365. Whereas in the desktop version, I think it's backwards. I think you get a lot more animations than you do transitions, but there's still a lot of both. All right. If there are no questions, then we are done for the evening. We'll be back here tomorrow, and we will be doing a step-by-step tutorial using PowerPoint. So that's another good use of PowerPoint. So have a good evening, and we'll see you here tomorrow.